Hello there, welcome to my guide for painting Marvel Zombies Deadpool. Now this will be both the hero version and the zombified version. As you can see, the first thing I did was spray both miniatures with some matte black spray from Colourforge. I then used a Baden black to tidy up any areas where the spray might have missed. And from there I thought I'd start on the black, so for the first highlight I used Corvus Black. The second highlight was a 50-50 mix of Corvus Black and Eshin Grey. And the final highlight was Eshin Grey just by its lonesome. Now I'm going to move on to his red, and for that I'm going to use Mephiston Red. Then I'll wash all of the red with some Carroburg Crimson. Once that wash is dried, I then went in and relayered the Mephiston Red just to neaten things up a bit, and I avoided all the recesses so we can keep that lovely shading. After that was a 50-50 mix of Mephiston Red and Evil Sun Scarlet for the first highlight, which was followed by Evil Sun Scarlet just by itself for the second. I then started on Deadpool's pouches with some Mournfang Brown. This was then given a wash with some Army Painter Soft Tone. And while that wash dried, I then painted the handles of his swords with some Corn Red. These were washed with some Nuln Oil. Once the wash had dried on the pouches, I then relayered the Mournfang Brown, once again avoiding all the recesses. I then highlighted the pouches with a 50-50 mix of Mournfang Brown and Scrag Brown. The handles of the swords were then highlighted with some Corn Red, just relayering it and trying to avoid any of those recesses. I then highlighted them with a 50-50 mix of Corn Red and Wazdaka Red. The zombie Deadpool has two pistols in the pouches on his legs, so I'm going to paint those with some Abaddon Black. There's also some clasps on the holsters as well, I'm going to paint those too. Both the pistols and the clasps will be highlighted with some Corvus Black. I then painted the Hydra head in Deadpool's hand with some Warpstone Glow. This will take a couple of coats. This was then washed with some Beltan Green. And while that wash dries, I'm going to use some Iron Hand Steel to paint the swords and the buckles on the straps. I'm also going to paint parts of the pistols as well. I'm going to paint the hammer and I'm going to paint the bottom of the magazine. All of this metal will then get a wash with some Nuln Oil. While that wash dries, I'm going to go back to the Hydra head and I'm going to use some Warpstone Glow just to tidy things up a bit. Make sure you avoid all the recesses, of course. I'll then highlight the head with a 50-50 mix of Warpstone Glow and Moot Green. The second highlight will be a 70-30 mix, but in favour of Moot Green. I'm then going to do a 50-50 mix of Iron Hat and Steel and Stormhost Silver to start highlighting all of the silver, followed by a second highlight of just Stormhost Silver. I'm then going to use Rakarth Flesh to start painting all of the flesh on Deadpool. Don't forget the knee and the chunk taken out of his ribs. All of the flesh will then receive a wash with some Reichland Flesh Shade. While that wash dries, I'll start working on the base for Hero Deadpool, and for that I'm going to use some Dawnstone to paint all of the concrete, which I'll then dry brush with some Grey Seer. I'm then going to use a little bit of Carroburg Crimson to paint in where the eye sockets would be on both Deadpool and the Hydra head. While that wash dries, I'm then going to use some matte white to paint Deadpool's eyes on his mask. If you make any mistakes, don't worry too much, because you can always go in with a little bit of Corvus Black or Abaddon Black and just neaten the area up. Next, I'm going to use some Flayed One Flesh to start painting in this skin of Deadpool. And this will be followed by a second highlight of Pallid Witch Flesh. Now Deadpool's got some exposed ribs, so I'm going to use some Morghast Bones just to paint those in, which I'll highlight with a 50-50 mix of Wraithbone and Morghast Bone. Then I'm very carefully going to paint in Deadpool's teeth as well as the teeth on Hydra Bob. Take your time with this bit and use a very light sort of touch so that way you don't splurge the paint too much and you can see tiny little gaps between the teeth. For Marvel Zombies, the zombie's eyes seem to be like an orange, so I'm going to use Fire Dragon Bright to paint those in. I then use Flash Gits Yellow to paint the eye lens on the Hydra agent's head. This is going to get a very quick highlight of a 50-50 mix of Flash Gits Yellow and Dawn Yellow. That's basically both models out of the way except for the bases, so I'm going to go back to the hero Deadpool and I'm going to paint the bombs on his base with some Iron Warriors. On the character card of the Zombie Deadpool, he's standing on a big load of cash, so I'm going to use some Nurgling Green to paint the entire base. I'll then give the whole base a wash with some Athonian camo shade. While that dries, I'm going to move back to the normal Deadpool. I'm going to use some Iron Hand Steel just to highlight all of the bombs that are on the base. Again, on the character card, one of the bombs has got a couple of bits of red, so we're going to paint those in with some Mephiston red. To highlight all the banknotes on the zombie pool, I'm going to do a 50-50 mix of Nurgling Green and Wraithbone. Then for the little strips of paper that are holding the money together, I'm just going to use Wraithbone by itself. Then for the detailing of the money, I'm going to use some War Flesh just to do a couple of lines and a little circle. I don't want to go try and do too much detail because at the end of the day, you're not really going to be paying much attention to the base. Then I'll neaten up both rims with some Abaddon Black. And I'll wash the base of the hero Deadpool with some watered down Agrax Earthshade. This next bit you can skip if you wish, but I'm going to use some blood for the Blood God, just to add a few streaks of blood on the sword, a little bit around the mouth, and I'm also going to use a little bit to do the bottom of the head and have it dripping on the money. And with that, that's them finished. I really enjoyed painting them. Come on, do some really lovely model sculpts, especially for this Marvel Zombies game. They are really lovely and really easy to paint. It didn't take very long whatsoever to paint these guys whatsoever. In fact, it only took about 4.5 hours to paint the pair. If you've only got the core box set, you'll only have to worry about the Zombie Deadpool, in which case it'll probably only take you around about 2 hours. If you follow this guide, I hope you found it helpful, and I also hope you had as much fun painting these guys as I did. I very highly recommend the Marvel Zombies game. It's quite a fun game, and these sculpts are fantastic. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, think about giving the channel a subscribe, the video a like, and I will see you on the next one. Goodbye for now, and thanks again for watching.